Welcome back to the show. Air travel fear. It's rising, and it's causing some travelers to feel the very real effects of anxiety.
That's right. That's why we have an expert in PTSD, trauma psychology, and flight medicine here with us to discuss why flight anxiety is getting worse and what people can do to take back some control. Welcome into Dr. Zaid Fadul. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, a very timely topic with what seems like an incident in the skies or on a plane every couple of days. In the last, 4-6 weeks or so. Give us a sense of why this fear is rising right now. Is it because we're feeding into it on the news every day?
I do think we're all culpable in this. There's something like 7 million flights a year, and we only hear about the one or two that there's some kind of incident with. It's a lot more likely to get in a car accident driving to work this morning than ever in your lifetime getting into a plane accident. So I understand the anxiety, and I think it's very, unfortunately, sensationalized. It's very easy to just be pulled in by an event like that.
Now, why would you say that our fears are rising? It's, of course, we're seeing it in front of us a lot, but I feel like we see, if any plane crashes in our country, it's covered pretty extensively, but why is it that now our brains seem to be processing them in a different way? Because even I, who can look at this information and logic it out that, okay, no, this is just sensationalism, but still you feel the fear inside. It makes you not want to get on the plane.
So I want to be clear. I feel the fear of flying too, and I'm a flight surgeon, and I fly a lot, and I feel the same level of anxiety regardless if there's a plane crash in the news or not. So I fully understand people's fears about that. In Canada, the plane flipped over because of the wind and a rough landing. So if that can cause it, how do you protect against that? The FAA and most of these major airlines work really hard to keep it safe. And even with that, you had the occasional accident. I do recognize that. I think it's important for people to recognize that pilots are doing everything they can. They want to get home to their families too. And a lot of what ends up happening is we don't know how to fly planes, and we're sitting in the back and we don't have any control, and that can inflate our anxiety. It's very, very easy to get lost in the back of that plane, not knowing what's going on, not understanding the sounds, not understanding the bumps, and causing that to just kind of trigger you.
Doctor, it's one thing to be anxious, nervous about getting on the plane, but once you're already on the plane, you just got to ride it out. I mean, what goes through the mind and the body when you have that stress and anxiety at 30,000 feet?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of times what ends up happening, if you feel stress or anxiety, there's a lot of physiologic changes that will happen. Our heart starts to race a little bit. Our chest gets a little tight. It may be a little harder to breathe. You may feel trapped. It's totally normal. And people can get there for a variety of reasons. I have a friend who's afraid of closed spaces. I have others that are afraid of heights and others that are afraid of flying. Everybody can get there one way or the other. I think the key thing is recognizing you have that anxiety or those triggers and trying to develop some countermeasures. The most common thing that I recommend is for deep breathing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with box breathing, but you breathe in for 4 seconds. You hold your breath for 4 seconds. You breathe out for 4 seconds. And then you hold that for 4 seconds before you start the cycle again. It gives you something to focus on. It helps relax some of that heart racing that you're feeling, some of the tightness in your chest, and it gives you a chance to kind of collect yourself. The other things I recommend for a lot of patients is to just find a distraction. That distraction could be Sudoku on the plane. That distraction could be downloading videos on your phone. That distraction could simply be, just kind of running through what you're flying for, whether it's going on a nice vacation or a business meeting you have coming up, or going to see family that you haven't seen in a really long time. Focusing on the end goal can really help us, visualize why we're doing what we're doing and get us through that moment.
Gotcha. Now, do you think other external factors kind of come into play here? You mentioned earlier a friend that, was claustrophobic a bit. Do you feel like if they're on a plane, they feel that little bit of bump, they're already kind of in panic mode because of the closed space that then affects and gives them that fear of flying, but it's really not a fear of flying necessarily?
Right. The fear of flying is just the outward sign of that underlying anxiety, right? And the question is, you're already primed, you're on edge. I think all of us have felt that where we're watching a scary movie and then somebody comes up and scares us. You can kind of jump. It's the same thing on a plane. If you're on edge a little bit, if you're just kind of primed to be anxious, it's going to work against you. For a lot of people, the external factors that can really contribute are the sounds that we don't recognize and the bumps in the flight. And just taking a moment to learn about turbulence can go a long way. A pilot friend of mine once described it to me as waves on the ocean, and that if you're in a boat and you're hitting those rough waves, you never think the boat's going to sink. You just know it's a rough ride. And turbulence is akin to that for flying. When you hit some rough patches of air, it's not as smooth as we would all like it to be, and it starts to make us feel like we're going to fall out of the sky, when in reality, it's just a rough patch. And if you just give it a few minutes, we'll pass right through it and on to the next moment. The other thing I think gets a lot of people is the sounds, right? The gears going down or the plane throttling up or throttling down. We don't recognize those sounds. We don't understand what's going on. And so it's a change, and that's what gets our attention. I, for my own self, I've learned how planes operate. I've learned exactly what the forces that propel a plane forward and keep it in the air and so forth, so on. So that when I hear certain things happening, I understand, okay, this is what's going on or that's what's going on. It gives me a sense of control and a sense of comfort that I understand why we're doing what we're doing. I think most of us intuitively understand that because when we're landing, all of us understand the plane's going down and we're like, oh, we're supposed to be doing this. And so there's a sense of comfort that we're about to be done, or the same when we're taking off. It makes sense. When we're banking, it's a little different. You don't understand why we're making a left or what's going on. So learning a little bit about that external environment can really comfort us when those moments come up.
Well, thank you, Doctor. We're about 10 seconds left. If you've got a resource for us to go to, maybe if there's a good suggestion on where we can go to help retrain our brain.
So one of the things we like to do at Better You is we like to focus on helping people deal with their underlying anxiety and depression. And at betteryoucare.com, we're always available to help patients work through the underlying issues that can prime them and trigger them to be anxious on the flight. And they're welcome to come visit anytime.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for giving us some time and being with us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.